Okay, I will make this presentation in English. So my name is Boris, and I'll be talking about engineering aesthetics. I've been developing professionally since early 90s and participated in over 100 projects since 2005 in web and mobile. I'm also a partner at Astrails. We are Ruby on Rails consultancy, which know how to bring ideas from a coffee shop napkin sketches to thousands of users. You don't hear me well? Okay, so, and the disclaimer, I'm not a designer. And I want to start this presentation from this picture, which has actually nothing to do with aesthetics, but it shows how developers and designers seen by each other. As you can see, developers, and I'm one of them, think about myself as a freaking scientist, while designers are kids with no clue. On the other hand, designers look at the developers, and I don't even know what this picture actually means, but designers think about themselves like models, which constantly showing themselves off. The main question is why this picture appeared at the first place. And it looks to me that first thing is lack of shared experience, meaning most designers have no idea how the development process works. On the other hand, developers have no idea how the designing process works. So let me ask you if we have any designer or somebody who thinks he's a designer. No, great. And silly question, do we have any developer? Well, the point is that designers and engineers actually care about different aspects. And designers care about how the application looks like and how it is used, while engineers actually care how the application works behind the scenes. And this is some kind of conflict of interest, because we might find it in that designers do not want to do something that engineers refuse to do. So when engineers come up with this, some of them obviously think that the product is completely ready. You can click the buttons, enter the data, it will validate the forms, show back some error messages, and from their point of view, everything is perfect. But it's a very long way from being there. On the other hand, designers, when they do something like that, they think that that's all, the work is done. The rest is somehow automatically will happen and work. And you know, both positions here is completely bullshit. Because only if designers and engineers work together, they can actually create a great products which are engineered and designed in a great way. So this is aesthetics, this is how it's built. And I can extend this to my daily job, because if I have some nice piece of hardware and good software that invites me to work on it, and even great framework that allows me to solve my current problems, I will always be happy. And this is the two sides of the same coin, actually a bit more sizes, but anyway. So the work of the designers and engineers is quite similar. Engineers care about architecture, right? And the designers care about design language. The design language is more or less the same concept in the design world like architecture in engineering. Engineers care about naming conventions, while designers care about style guides. And engineers have to hate code duplication, while designers have to hate identity crisis. Identity crisis is when the same elements have different representation. Cancel could be a link or a button or anything. This is something called identity crisis. Also, engineers must to hate long methods in the same way like designers hate short-term memory loss. Short-term memory loss is when user's input is lost. I mean, you fill very, very, very long form, click next, some validation fail, and then you have to fill it again. This is something also some engineers hate. So we can't actually teach designers how to code. On the other hand, I know few people that are really great designers and engineers as well, but it's very rare. On the other hand, we can learn or teach the engineers how to understand design. Naturally, we don't have to require them to design anything, but to understand how this process works will actually contribute to the aesthetics, that this aesthetics would be engineered. So let's have a 15 minutes or even 10 minutes short crash course of how I learned to stop worrying and love design. By the way, in German and Dutch, there are two words for the design. First is formgeben, which stands for form giving, or about actually making an object to look well. And Entwurf, which goes for planning or engineering an object functionality. In English, unfortunately, we have only one, which is design, and it, by the way, used in both worlds, engineering and design. It is best definition of it is method of solving visual and physical problems. There are many kinds of designs. Graphic design, it's all about visual. This is, by the way, the poster by Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits done by Milton Glaser back in 1975. It's one of the most favorite ones. Print design, everything about printing on real paper. I don't know who use it now, but anyway. Interaction design, how users actually interact with the digital product. So, or in a simple words, how it works when we touch it. And user interface design is to simplify this interaction, or basically how it looks before we touch it. And the most important thing of any design is not to bring too much attention to the design itself, because the design goes to solve some particular problem of showing some content. UX design is about seamless interaction between user and the product, so how user thinks. And the industrial design is all about how these physical goods look like. And the funny thing that recently design becomes a key differentiator that differentiate different products from the another. So I personally switched to Call by AnyDo after using Calvetica for a while, only because it looks much better. So how designing process works and how we as engineers can contribute to this process to make the world better. Engineering process usually represented or simplified to something like that. Planning, implementing, testing, and debugging. And sometimes it goes back to, again, planning, implementing, testing, and debugging, etc. On the other hand, design process looks looks quite similar. It's about sketching, design, and interaction. First of all, we have to define goals, no matter if we're designing or developing something. And what the app is about. Is it about discovering content, or it's about shopping particular products, or it's about, whatever. The next would be a sketching. And the sketching hits many targets. One of them is generate many ideas quickly and identify complexity on the early stages, and to also identify faults, different flows of the application that can be identified on this particular stage. And there is quite aesthetically engineered product for doing that that's called Pencil, which is used with another product, which is an application, which called Paper. So you can actually wireframe or sketch anything on your iPads. And the next thing is wireframing. Wireframing is a very important part of any product, because behind every element on the screen there is some kind of functionality of sending emails, connecting with third-party APIs, etc. And there are two kinds of wireframes. Functional, when the elements more or less look the same, with no accent on any particular areas on the screen. It just shows everything that should be shown on the screen. And then it goes for grouping. So designers group different elements together, like content elements goes one after another. Navigation is grouped somewhere on the left-hand side or at the top, and the actions should be made quite prominent. Action items should be made quite prominent. I mean, buttons and things like that. And then we go to design wireframe. The design wireframe actually takes into account positioning and layout of the elements on the screen. On my position, from my point of view, this design wireframes is quite a waste, because Sketch is quite close to functional wireframes. It looks more or less the same, but usually functional wireframes are digital, and Sketch are not. And desired wireframes are quite close to the final UI design. So probably it makes sense after the functional wireframes, go directly to the UI design and choose the layout of particular page, grid, wizard, dashboard, whatnot, maintain consistency and avoid identity crisis. Like, button is always a button. And the next thing is actually testing. So we can take these papers or PDF pages or whatever result of the wireframing is, and try to click the buttons or pretend we enter the data and navigate from page to page. So can anybody figure out what's missed on this particular screen? Sign up is a good version, but what is most important here, I can't recover my password. I mean, the forget my password link is missed. And this is something that we can figure out or debug without writing any line of code. So this part of things can be done even before writing the code. And then we go to visual design. There are actually 3 points that you should know about visual design. It's color, typography, and rhythm. So color, there's a whole color theory behind how these colors are built, why they're built in this way, and actually what the color means in the final representation. So for example, green goes for growth and positive, yellow goes for emotional, and red goes for danger, negative, and hot in European countries. On the other hand, in Japan, it goes for life. And in China, it goes for good luck, celebration, happiness, and joy. So actually, we have to take into account target audience or their location and background culture before choosing these colors. Next thing is font. Fonts is all about mood. So there are 2 kinds of fonts, and this more or less everything you have to know about fonts and typography. There is a serif and the sans serif. The serif has these strokes at the top and the bottom of the buttons, and the idea behind these strokes came from a printing that it actually guides horizontal flow of eye to follow the lines. It's not very widely used in digital media, usually for headers and subheaders. On the other hand, sans serif is used quite widely because it looks better on smaller screens, and the form or the shape of the letters are much more simpler, and it's just better scaled on devices. But the most fascinating thing about fonts is that in Latin typography, information is not carried in the bottom part of the letters. You barely can read this, right? But this is a world information. The whole information in the fonts is carried in the top part of the letters. Let's go to the rhythm. Rhythm is all about consistent spacing and calculable sizes. So this is the Google search result page. And as you can see, every paragraph is separated from another with the same distance of white space. This white space actually divides the pieces of information one from another. And modern frameworks can actually help us to define these things and make all these things quite engineerable. So we can define the font sizes, and we can define the delta sizes and calculate the big fonts, the small fonts, etc., etc. Next is a grid. This is some random page from the internet, and as you can see, it's clearly divided into 3 columns. Each one of this column is also built to divide the content one from another. And this is something that can be engineered as well. Modern frameworks like Bootstrap provides the ability to change the variables and to play with the sizes automatically. So all these things is about establishing a hierarchy. We have a left-hand side with navigation, we have a middle side with some real content, and the right-hand side with social parts, social data. All these 3 parts will become partials, views, templates, whatever, depending on the framework you're using to develop it. But it's very important to maintain the consistency of all these parts through the whole application. And the last but not the least is the motion and visual effects. It's about status of the current action, about visual feedback, and to orient the user. So it will report that something is happening on the application by changing its hue. Like, you know, the buttons, when you press this particular button, it's like representing the physical world. It changes its color or it's kind of pushed in. This is something that usually done at the last stage of the visual process. And we have all these design patterns, well-known and recognizable UI elements and animations, and it's super important to not to allow designers you work with to come up with new ones, because it should be an absolutely perfectly justified to create a new UI element that people are not familiar with. It will take time to people to understand how does it work and to not afraid of using it. So now, when you more or less know how all this thing works and what to expect from them, I want to claim that this is absolutely must to have designers be a part of the engineering team and have engineers be a part of the designing team in order to aesthetics will be engineered in the proper way. And I see I've done almost 97 slides in 15 minutes. So let's get back to this picture. In fact, it has an extension where project managers involved. And this is probably a good topic for another talk. Thank you.